The last few verses have been about karma and how it doesn't really exist. And in fact, the notion of karma reinforces the notion that there are real individuals. So it's not very useful to us as enlightenment practitioners. And the next few verses, verse 539 onwards, are about something called the defilements, which is related to karma. Basically, if you're not enlightened right now, you're caught up in these defilements. And in traditional Buddhism, these defilements are hatred, greed, and ignorance. They're at the center of the wheel of life. They keep the whole thing going. They keep the whole edifice of conventional understanding, of conventional reality going. As enlightenment practitioners, we step back from this. We step back from the wheel of life. This usually happens in the first place quite spontaneously. We spontaneously observe the whole thing as if we're outside it. But then we get sucked back into it. And this is where our enlightenment practice begins. We have to then make an effort to come back to this awareness which is witnessing the whole thing as if from the outside. Essentially, if you're not in this awareness right now, then you're in the throes of these defilements. And Wikipedia has quite a good definition of these. It's in an article on kleshas, that's the Sanskrit term, klesha with a K. I'll just read it out. Kleshas in Buddhism are mental states that cloud the mind and manifest in unwholesome actions. Kleshas include states of mind such as anxiety, fear, anger, jealousy, desire, depression, etc. So that's quite a list. Anxiety, fear, anger, jealousy, desire, depression. These are often what we're inhabiting rather than enlightened awareness. And they're incredibly strong. They're not just mental states, they're physical states. I had a rather unsettling dream last night. I dreamt that I'd been diagnosed with cancer. And somebody who'd come to the hospital with me, a friend, a dream friend, as I was lying back on a table of some sort, my friend asked me to try not to cry. Because I was crying and I hadn't realized I was crying. I was attempting to maintain some sort of composure, but it seems I was crying. And it was something that the body was doing. It's probably best if I could have given a real example rather than a dream example, but it was very real, as these things usually are. But these things affect you physically. Jealousy, anger, you shake with rage. You quiver with fear and anxiety. You're burned up by desire. You're flattened by depression. They all have physical feelings. They're physical things. We can experience them as knots inside of ourselves. Even when you wake up in the morning and you have to get to work, you have to get up early to get to work. What's your mood? Or if you're trying to get to sleep at night and your mind is spinning around like a boat's propeller out of water, boat's not getting anywhere, but the propeller's still spinning around. You're caught up in something. As enlightenment practitioners, we have to learn to deal with all these things. We have to be able to get on with things without the mood baggage. Our moods are so much who we are. We often don't even notice them. We might not even notice that we've been depressed for quite a while. It becomes so normal. I'm not talking about clinical depression, just feeling very flat and the opposite of effervescent. It becomes what we're used to. So it takes an effort to observe this and to get behind this. But if you're an enlightenment practitioner, if there has been a spontaneous realization of this witnessing awareness and of its wonderful reality, then you've got something you can come back to. And there are many tools. These videos, for one, or the texts themselves, or other teachers. Immerse yourself in these teachings. There's actually another teaching which I think is quite useful. I mentioned that I was reading Edward Conze's short collection of Buddhist scriptures published in the Penguin Classics series. And he talks about something called the outflowings. The outflows, the 4 outflows. And the original term for this is asava, or ashrava. Collins lists the 4 outflows in his glossary at the back. The first one being sense desire, the second one desire for becoming, the third one wrong views, and the 4th ignorance. And he says that extinction of the outflows constitutes arahatship. Arahatship is, we can understand as the outcome of successful enlightenment practice. There's also an article on the asavas in Wikipedia, and curiously they're described as inflows. I think outflows is a better term because it's like something seeping away, something's flowing out from us, and it's our sense of being. It gets siphoned off through the senses, through the apparent senses. So we're being depleted, our sense of being is being depleted because we're directing our attention continuously into the sense channels. And the sense channels includes the channel leading to our thoughts, our mental operations, our mental constructs. So this is sense desire. Looking out from ourselves for some kind of satisfaction. The second one is desire for becoming, which seems rather cryptic. But this desire for becoming is the belief, the feeling that what we're looking out for, what we're looking outwards towards, is real. This whole physical world, we want to give it reality. This whole physical world that we're looking out into, we want to give it reality. Including all the people that are moving around in it, including me, that's apparently moving around in it. So this is the follow-on to sense desire. the desire for becoming, the desire for making our fantasies real, the desire for making our false imagination real. And the third outflow is wrong views. Well, we get into a very topsy-turvy situation. Rather than the awareness, which is aware of all this, being regarded as real, we give the constructions that are created in awareness reality. So we're living in a perverse, topsy-turvy understanding. This is wrong views. We start going around believing that the stage set is reality. It's like we're in a dream. We take all the parameters within the dream as reality. The dream is a construction of consciousness, as is what we call the waking state. It's a construction of consciousness. And yet, we'll wander around this construction, regarding it as reality, and perhaps even doubting or denying the reality of consciousness. So this is wrong views. And the whole thing is kept up by the fourth outflow, which is ignorance. And ignorance isn't simply not knowing something. It is willfully not knowing. It is willfully avoiding asking certain questions. It's willfully avoiding questioning our own intrinsic beliefs, our own intrinsic understanding. And there's a little verse quoted in the Wikipedia article on the kleshas, which I think expresses the power of this. This is from a series of 10 discourses on the kleshas, and the Buddha's talking to his monks. Monks, any desire, passion with regard to the I is a defilement of the mind. In other words, this keeps the mind occupied outwards. Any desire, passion with regard to the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the intellect, I think we can understand the intellect as mental objects, is a defilement of the mind. When with regard to these 6 bases, and these bases are the channels of the senses, the defilements of awareness are abandoned, then the mind is inclined to renunciation. The mind, fostered by renunciation, feels malleable for the direct knowing of those qualities worth realizing. And those qualities worth realizing are awareness. So this is a very good quote. It's describing the outflowing, which is a defilement of the mind. The mind can be turned to awareness, or it can be turned to what was called the other 6 bases, or the 6 channels of the senses, towards the 5 physical senses, but I think more importantly, towards the sense that apprehends our mental contents, because most of us are caught up actually in our thoughts. So this is the outflowing. This outflowing creates the reality, the very limited and limiting reality that we habitually inhabit. Coming back to purely practical considerations, like I said, when you wake up in the morning and you've got to get to work, or perhaps you haven't been able to get to sleep because things are whizzing around up here, what do you do? What do you do? Well, you have to come up with your own strategies. You could try just focusing. This is what I often do. You can focus on the breathing, but I quite like to focus on the point in the centre of the forehead. Traditionally, I think you're supposed to focus on the point between the two eyebrows, but I find focusing on the head, centre of the head, is quite a pleasant sensation, and you can enter into it and see the pull of the outflow into that, and just not go with it. You just don't go with it. And if you're getting up in the morning and you feel grumpy, then be aware of it. Don't feed it. Realize that this is part of your mood pattern. Become bigger than it. We have this going on all day and most of the night. Our mood patterns, sometimes very heavy ones, knots of passion, knots of lust, desire, anxiety, fear, depression. Whew, it's all going on. But we can navigate this. We can build up our map. We can see where these things happen at certain times of the day, certain times of the month. We have our patterns. We can navigate it, stop getting sucked into them. Endeavour to immerse yourself more and more in the teachings, in the scriptures, in the videos, in whatever inspires you. Be inspired. Be inspired. This is the main thing. And if that seems like a tall order, then the next verse might help somewhat. But I'll continue with that in the next video.